Hey everybody, it's Chris and Rick Talk Guitars. Today we want to talk about a couple albums. One is by The Replacements called Sorry Ma Forgot to Take Out the Trash. And the other is one of UFO's finest albums called Lights Out. And we'll talk about Lights Out first. Came out in 77. It's just one of my favorite albums as a whole album, really. I mean, I love the guitar sounds and I love the guitar playing, but I just think it's one of the coolest albums that they put out song-wise as well. But in terms of guitar tone, it's just that quintessential Schenker, through a Marshall. I just dig all the songs. But there's one song in particular that I think is interesting. I think it sounds like he's going direct, which is Try Me, that kind of slow song. You familiar with that, Chris?
Yeah, that ballad tune.
Yeah, but I just dig the sound that he gets on that recording. It's so intimate and in your face, and he does that harmony too with himself. But I just dig that sound. Does that sound like he's going direct to you?
I listened to the song this morning, and I had the record back in the days, but I don't recall. One thing that I noticed about that I didn't notice before when I was a kid was that they're using, it must be like an Ovation acoustic guitar. They're plugged in. So it's really interesting because they're using that sound that the entire acoustic guitar industry took years and years to try to get rid of, but they're using it creatively on that record. Did you notice that? It's like that quacky Ovation acoustic guitar sound. So it's not mic'd, it's like electric. And I'm guessing it's an Ovation because at that time they were really popular, but it has that sound. But the way they use it on that record is really interesting because it works. It works well, but it's that quacky, like, sound that so many pickup companies have tried to get rid of. So that's what I noticed. And it's on that song, too.
Oh, got it. That's so funny. Yeah, you could be right because, I mean, those guitars were all over. Everybody was using an Ovation at that time. I mean, it's insane. All the footage I see of people playing acoustics back then were playing Ovations at one point or another. I think Paul Simon was playing one too for a little bit, but yeah, I just think in terms of guitar sound, it's just he just gets such a cool sound. It's such a unique sound. I never really knew until I think you told me that he was playing through a wah that it was on, but it was just, he found a sweet spot and left it there. Cause I kind of always wondered how he got that quacky, kind of cool, mid-rangey guitar sound. But once you find that out, and it's like you want to experiment with it and get it because it's just such a cool, because the guitar cuts through, but it's still got that squishy kind of cool overdrive sound, but it kind of cuts through in a really cool way.
Yeah, no, a lot of people use that, and I didn't realize that until much later because that's that nasally, like honky guitar sound that just totally punches out, and I'm like, how are they doing that? And yeah, a lot of people did that, but he was pretty famous for that. But no, that record, listening to it again after, some time, one of the things that stood out to me is how restrained and deliberate the playing is on that. Like, it's so not what happens on a lot of records anymore. It's like, we all know what Michael Schenker's capable of, but he's playing a lot of just totally in the pocket, restrained parts that just kind of fill out the rest of the song. If you listen to it on your own, you're like, he must be going crazy. He could be like ripping or adding riffs or whatever, but he's just playing these really deliberate parts. But when you look at the sum of those parts and what they create, that's the way like a lot of songs were created back then. It's kind of like, the really like dry drum sound. And then you've got, the rhythm guitar and the keyboards, and then another rhythm guitar part that he's playing that's really simple, but works against the other guitar part. There's a lot of that on that record. Yeah,
I think that's a really good observation. Also, for me, again, it just reinforces the fact that, or reinforces for me why I'm drawn to him as a player so much is his melody. Like, he's such a melodic player. Like, I think people think of him as a shredder, which he is, but kind of like you were saying, he doesn't just wank. He tries to find melodic phrasing and good note choice for whatever passages he's playing. And I think this is a really good album to showcase that. And so I'm drawn to like melodic players and melodic songwriters. And again, this album really just epitomizes that for me in terms of some of his playing. And again, Love to Love is one of the coolest songs, I think, by them. And that's got some cool guitar stuff in there as well. What are some of the key songs on that album that you dig guitar-wise?
Well, that was great. That the intro, the way that song unfolds on this record, and even more so on the live album, what is that, Strangers in the Night, is it's got that eerie, like, kind of Exorcist sounding, like, piano or keyboard part in the beginning, and they just build upon that, and it just, like, creates a lot of excitement live. I've seen them live, but not with Schenker. And I think that one has a pretty prominent, like, plugged-in acoustic guitar, too, if I remember correctly. But that's a great one. And I remember working that solo out as a kid, the first solo, the one where it's, really melodic part, and I love to play that. Schenker's got this thing going on where he's got this, I don't want to say boogie, but the way he swings some of those lines really fast, where he's playing melodic and then he goes into this thing, it's just mind-blowing. For me, I mean, thinking back on those days when I first, when I first discovered UFO, for a lot of kids, it was, Eddie Van Halen was the guitar god, right? And for some reason back then, I wasn't really that into Van Halen, even being a guitar player. Michael Schenker was my Van Halen. He was the guy that I just thought was a god, a guitar god, and I just wanted to do that. I just wanted to be him. I just thought he was amazing. And I think it was his melody. I mean, you're right. He can shred. He can go really fast. But just like the lyrical playing, which Eddie Van Halen is totally capable of. But in the context of the band UFO, I think Schenker got to shine a little bit more because, the hook, the nature of the hooks of the songs and stuff like that. So, yeah, I loved him.
Well, and I totally dig what you're saying about Boogie. I think you're absolutely right. And he captures a feel and a tempo, like Too Hot to Handle, for instance, like that song, like just the chords he's playing and the way he's playing them, and then also just the lead stuff he does on that, to me, kind of typifies what you're saying about a boogie or kind of a capturing a feel. And that's the way he played. It's like, it's a lot of feel. That's what I get from his playing, feel and melody. And yeah, like you, I was drawn to that when I was young too. It just grabbed me. It's just like, this guy knows what he's doing. It's like, even when he's just playing chords, it's like he's not just, I mean, there's a rhythm to it and a feel to it. And yeah, it's kind of cool. Too Hot to Handle for me came to my mind when you said boogie. I mean, what do you think about when you hear
that solo? It starts out like, I think, with a couple of bends, and then he goes into that thing where he's just like, it's like got a really swingy, really fast swingy element to it. And I guess, you could call it like a boogie feel, but I mean, I could never do that. I mean, I would just start working his solos out and get to a little passage like that, and I'm like, fuck you, I can't do that. It's just, I mean, it's part of his unique style. And I love that about him. And that just makes all of like the soft, lyrical, melodic stuff just that more powerful, because he's in that mode, and all of a sudden he does these passages where he just like flies down the fretboard. So it's not like wanking at all. It just like fits together at just point A to point B with, point B1 in the middle.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And especially that song Too Hot to Handle, I think that lead is one of the coolest leads I've ever heard, just because he's not just trying to wank, he's trying to match the chords that are underneath, and he's trying to put together these phrases that, that communicate, whatever he's feeling. Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. And again, yeah, as a player, he was one of mine, definitely when I was younger, for sure. I mean, he just stood out. I heard Lights Out, and then a couple of other early albums, and just like, I was captivated by that guy's sound. Like, again, like, just his sound alone to me. And again, as we talked about it, like, it's his fingers, it's the way he plays, it's the guitar he's playing. But that wah, I think, really just set him apart from other players. I mean, like you're saying, I guess other players are doing it, but I wasn't really aware of it as much as when I heard Schenker play, I guess, to get that sound. What are some other players that were doing that back then?
Mick Ronson was a huge
Oh, that's right.
And Frank Zappa was really into. He would use a wah, but he'd also use other things to get that honk, kind of like that frequency to poke out. But those are a few that I can think of off the top of my head. But yeah, I've played around with that. It's cool. I mean, if you dig out a wah and do that and kind of search for a frequency that really pops out and makes it sound great. I mean, you can get a lot of ideas because it just changes how everything just kind of responds when you play. Even it's a really interesting thing to try.
Yeah, I know, and that's another cool thing and it's not a big deal. It's like it's just a wah pedal, and you can get a wah pedal for cheap, and I think he even said he used like Dunlop wahs or Vox wahs, but nothing special, whatever we had on hand. But that's an easy thing to do if you're a guitar player, just to try something new, is just to mess around with that wah-wah pedal and try to find a sweet spot that you dig. Yeah, I've kind of messed around with it too, and it's kind of fun. But yeah, so that album for me is just one of my favorite albums, just from a song perspective and definitely from a guitar perspective. So I always put that on, consistently every now and then and just kind of geek out on it. And I've been doing a lot of listening with headphones lately too, which is super cool. And I've just really gotten into all the instruments and the sounds. And so that's been really cool for me lately. Let's talk about the Replacements album. Why don't you start in with that one?
All right. Yeah. The Replacements, Sorry Ma Forgot to Take Out the Trash, was their first record in 1981. And then I was a huge Replacements fan back in the mid to late 80s, like right when they were kind of still around. But I kind of went backwards. My introduction to the Replacements were Let It Be, Tim, and then Hootenanny. And, much later I went and got their first record. And it's so weird because their first record is great, but they have records after that are like the critically acclaimed, and they kind of came into their own and they had their thing going on and they're fantastic. But Sorry Mom is the one in recent years, is the one that I listen to the most. I'll dig it out and play it. And I was trying to figure that out. It's kind of why I chose this record to talk about, is what about that record is so appealing to me. And one of the things is it's me being from Michigan, the Midwest, it's like folk music for the Midwest. All the songs on there are just things I can completely relate to, like bad weed deals and hanging out in convenience stores and downtown. And they're just these really short, energetic, super fast, like rock and roll songs.
Yeah.
And the things that I ended up loving about like Let It Be, Tim, Pleased to Meet Me, and Hootenanny, they're in place on this record. It's like, just a casual listening, you might miss them, but all of the things that made them a fantastic band are on that record. It's just, it's so kind of misleadingly simple because it's fast, energetic, and a casual listening, you're like, oh yeah, this is just American punk with tinges of hardcore from the 80s. But you listen deeper, and all the things that they went on to develop to become this fantastic band are there. But I just like the way it's presented, just the way the songs roll out, the pacing. What was your question? Do you have a question?
Well, I just asked you to get it started, and you did a great job. Just adding on to that, I would say totally. To me, it's obviously it's their first album, so it's the raw, probably some of the rawest Replacements you'll hear. But like you said, it's not just punk. It's like I can hear this Westbergian stuff within each song, like just the way his chord choice and the way he sings over. Sometimes you'll get the references to the later albums and some of the later songs, and that's kind of what I dug about it too. But what I really dug is just the rawness of the sound and like the very punk. I mean, I just kept thinking about Ramones and other punk bands like that I love, that are, again, like I'm drawn to melody no matter what genre it is. I love bands that are able to create some kind of melody that is pleasing to me while expressing themselves in whatever way they are. And punk, I'm drawn to punk bands like The Clash, the Ramones, the Replacements. I'd consider them punk to some degree. But yeah, I thought And then I watched some live stuff from '81 to kind of get an idea what they were playing through too, and it's just so cool because they didn't screw around either. It's just like one song after the other, and so. But yeah, I in terms of guitar tones and stuff, what are your observations about that, if any?
Well, like you said, it's totally a raw record, and I think that's part of its charm. But one thing with guitar and vocals, Paul Westerberg is one of the best rock and roll phrasers. I mean, his phrasing on the vocals on this record is just fantastic. It's exciting. It's just like classic, like rock and roll. Like it draws you in, and the band knows how to work with that, either whether it's conscious or not. Like all of the bass and the guitar and the drums work with that. So every line that he says just punches out and it just delivers, the song like perfectly. And one of the things that used to drive me nuts is all of the reviews early on for the replacements that reviewer would mention, they can't really play their instruments, which is completely ridiculous. Yes, maybe there were times when they were playing live where they were so drunk that they couldn't play their instruments, but even listening to their first record, raw as it is they played together fantastically. I mean, like I'm saying, Paul Westerberg's phrasing is just like phenomenal, but part of the reason is the band knows how to help with that phrasing. I mean, the bass, just the way, his bass lines kind of just punch in and out, and Bob Stinson's little guitar, like his single note guitar lines that he peppers here and there, it's not really rhythm, it's not really lead, it's not a solo. It's just like all that just stuff enhances the delivery of the song. And it's really exciting. I mean, this record you play a lot, and it's fun, it's funny, but it's not, silly. It's just great, like folk music to me.
Yeah, I think it's kind of I think punk, I would consider this a punk album too. And I think a lot of people tend to write off punk musicians as not being able to, quote, not being able to play their instruments, which is a crock, I think. They're just coming at it from a different perspective than other musicians. It's just like, it's just whatever. But yeah, I think Bob Stinson, a lot of his solos are really cool for the way you mentioned it. It's like, it's not necessarily a lead and it's not necessarily rhythm, but it's just like there's something going on there that's kind of unique and really cool. And also like the live stuff I was watching, I couldn't even tell what amps they were using. I don't even know what Westerberg was playing through, but I think the other guy, Bob Stinson, was playing through some kind of Fender thing, but they got this really cool, like, Westerberg's tone wasn't really super overdriven. It was just more like, I can't describe it. He was playing through a P90, but it was really cool. And just their tones together really sounded cool live, and especially obviously on the record, they have a really cool sound. But yeah, I'm always struck by that. Like people say that about all those punk bands. Oh, they can't play their instruments. It's like, well, fuck you. They're playing they're coming from a different headspace than like a prog rock band or a rock and roll band or any other kind of band. And it doesn't mean they can't play their instruments. It just means they're just coming from a different headspace.
Oh, they're delivering songs. I mean, these songs are great. I mean, there's some of them are really short. They're kind of like, they kind of seem a little, jokey, but there's great lyrics buried in there too. And yeah, I mean, they know how to play. Listen to like on a song where they'll just immediately break down into like this little blues, a few bars of blues or something. It's just like seamless, and they're all playing together. They all know where everybody is. You can tell that they're just, they know these songs inside out, and they're complicated. A lot of these sound really easy, but they're pretty complicated. And, you watch that. I think the video that you're referring to, there's some live at the 7th Street entry stuff from '81. And if that's what it is, they're on fire. I mean, they're just like Westerberg's sweating. They're just going one song to the next. And he goes out of tune at one point, but it's still great. The energy level is just like, it's just like unmatched. They're just on fire. But for instruments during this time, I'm looking at the cover here of this record, and Westerberg, who, as I understand it, he favored Gibsons a lot of the time. So he was like very early on. He had 335, and he liked the junior style guitars. It's junior special. So he had like a Les Paul SG Jr., and I think he had a single cut Junior. So he was big into the Gibsons. And on this record, it's very interesting because Bob Stinson has some sort of Telecaster guitar, but it has a tailpiece and the ABR like Gibson bridge, the Gibson style bridge, just a single humbucker in the bridge position. So I don't know what guitar that was. And Tommy Stinson is playing on the front. He's playing a cool, who made the Silvertone, a Silvertone bass. And I just for a second, I really love Tommy Stinson's bass playing on this record.
Yeah.
It's just really bouncy and great and kind of wild. And, you know, that matched with Bob Stinson. He's kind of reckless, but, you know, he's there. I mean, to know his influences, he was really into like prog rock. Like he was at Yes and all this other stuff. And at times you can see that poking out. But to me, he often sounds like just a wild, almost like Ace Frehley at times, where it's just like kind of reckless, but it's just really exciting and it draws you in. But the whole package is what I like. And on this record, it's just how everybody interacts. It's kind of like with the UFO record. It's the sum of the parts. It's what's going on.
Yeah, I totally agree. And when I was watching that live footage, I was really focusing on Tommy Stinson. He's a great bass player. I mean, even he was super young back then. He just, I don't know. I think he had this innate sense of how to play. Yeah, I was really, really getting into it. And like you say, I think that's the recording, the one you referred to. I think that is the one you were talking about. They're in this little club and they're just busting out the song. They don't even count the songs. They're just like, they end one song and then Westerberg grumbles something into the mic and then they start another song. It's like, it's insane, but it's very energetic. It's very exciting. You can see, and like I was saying, in some of these songs, there are little passages where Westerberg's singing over a chord progression, and it's hinting at these other songs coming out in the future. And that's what I dig, is just to kind of see the raw talent and potential of this band and him as a songwriter in these early recordings. That's kind of what I really dig about it too.
Yeah, there's the hooks. I mean, they're in there, and they're great. I mean, I like this record. I do like what it hints at too, but I just like this record. I mean,
yeah.
I hate music. I mean, some of these songs are, you know, Johnny's Gonna Die is great because, you know, nobody was surprised that it turned out to be true, but it has that groove that will pop up again later. It's that totally like groove. Like I think like from Tim, like Swingin' Party or something, where and that kind of interplay on that song, I really dig. Bob Stinson's guitar, he bunks a few notes here and there, but it's totally in the spirit, and you know the tone and everything is there. My thought on this is they picked a good guitar, a good amp, and turned it up, and just had some songs.
Yeah.
And I mean, no one's gonna like write a book about the tone on this record, or I love the tone that Gibson P90s get with a cranked amp. So, you know, I'm sold on that for, you know, everything. But some of these songs sound like they were recorded at different times in different sessions in different rooms. So that kind of adds to its charm. It's just like one after the other, these short little folk songs that they sound different, and it's like they didn't take, you know, 6 weeks to get a snare drum sound. You know what I mean? It's like stick it in a room and turn it up and play. And the performances on this record, to me, do capture a lot of that spirit that's you can see in that video, where it's like, wow, this band is you know, off the hook, and it's there in this recording for me. And I think that's another reason why I like it.
Yeah, and for me, that's a big deal too. Is for the studio recording to capture whatever live energy a band has, and a lot of times it isn't translated very well, and this one is translated really well. And that's one of the things I dig about this recording too, is that it captures the live frenetic energy that this band just puts out in the studio. And like you're saying, yeah, they wouldn't tolerate some engineer trying to get drum sounds for 20 minutes. They didn't have the attention span, right? It's like, and that again, like that comes through in their music. It's like they're not screwing around. They just have this inside them, and they want to get it out. And there's no, they don't want to screw around with anything that's going to distract from that.
they weren't screwing around, but they were screwing around their entire career in every other respect.
Well,
So
sure. That's the duality that I kind of dig about this band is that they were, like you were saying, it's not silly, but it's kind of off the cuff or snarky. There's a lot of darkness. You know what I mean? It's not. I mean, the Replacements are dark, man. It's like there's some dark shit coming through everything that they produce. But again, that's part of the intrigue about this band and about Westerberg as an artist. For me, it's like just this duality. I mean, the whole thing is that they were always self-sabotaging themselves, right? They're their own worst enemy. Like in interviews, they were, just taunting the interviewer and saying crazy shit. And when they were on tour, they were burning their per diem money and stuff. Like it's all kind of captured in their music, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, we should circle back to a little bit more UFO because we spent so much time on Replacements, which I don't mind, but I mean, I don't want to shortchange UFO. Let me ask you something. Did you have when you were a kid, did you have the Strangers in the Light live record?
No, I didn't.
Do you have it now?
No.
Oh, you definitely need to check that out because I love Lights Out, the studio record, but you should hear the versions on the live record of that. Like, you mentioned Love to Love.
Yeah.
That song live is just amazing. I mean, if you've never heard, I definitely recommend
live versions of that song. Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe you probably heard it. It's pretty famous, but that's one of the best live records, live rock records. It's really, really good. So you should definitely check it out if you don't. I mean, check it out. I'm sure you've heard it before, but like it's worth owning now and revisiting. But because that was the one thing that when I was listening to Lights Out, the production was kind of jarring at first because I was so used to it. I didn't have Lights Out when I was a kid. I had the live record and I played it all the time. I have Lights Out now, but I haven't listened to it in a few years. And when I first started listening to it, and that song in particular, Love to Love, I'm like, wow, that sounds completely different. I mean, it's got the same eerie keyboard, but it's just like, it's that studio. It's really clean, tidy studio production, which I'm not saying is bad. I actually like that in 70s records, but it's just, that song translated really well live. All those songs did that are on the live album from that record.
Yeah, I think they were a great live band. And again, like you're saying, I think UFO especially, maybe a lot of the live vibe didn't completely translate over into the studio stuff, but I dig kind of, there's this weird ambient, I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, there's obviously reverb and things like that, but it's done in a way that's not overbearing but it adds this eerie kind of cool ambient sound to the recordings that I dig. And especially on Lights Out, I hear that, especially on songs like Try Me or even Love to Love for that matter, which I dig, and I don't really hear so much on newer recordings. And it's probably, the irony is it's probably some of the limitations of the gear at the time, but it just has such a cool sound to me. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think I do. Yeah. It's probably a little bit of the compression that everything has from the tape. It's a pretty dry recording. I mean, I know I can hear the reverb. There was one song that struck me. Oh, Getting Ready.
Yeah.
That's another one where you can really hear the acoustic guitar. But that's an example. That song is an example of like, I was a modern guitar player. If you learn that song, it would be really hard to play with that much restraint because it's really focused. It's there and it works really well. As a listener, you're like, yeah, we don't need to add these little flourishes and all these little things on these chords. Just play the chords and you have a bass over there, you have keyboards, just play a really restrained part and it'll all work. The sum of the parts will make it work great, which I struggle with as a guitar player all the time. Like playing, I have a guitar part, okay, I can play it like this. I find that it sounds better when I just dial it back, play it just a little bit more focused. And, sure, I can put this fancy little riff between the chord changes, but maybe I shouldn't here, you know what I mean? We have a bass player there that will fill in something and, another guitar. And that's what struck me on this recording is just like everything was, pretty thought out. There's energy. I mean, the songs are good, so there's a lot of energy, but it's a classic 70s style record, the way it's made, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I think that's a great observation, is just restraint. I mean, I think we're all like that. We all, especially guitar players that come from that guitar slinger era. But yeah, I think that's the word I would come up with, is restraint. And the rhythm tracks that he puts down are just awesome. They're just great because they have such feel, and they just support whatever he's doing on the leads so well. But there's not a lot of embellishment or a lot of messing around under there. It's just a straight, nice feel rhythm guitar. Yeah. And another thing I just marvel at every time I listen to those recordings is the singer, Phil Moog. Or is it Moog or Moog or whatever?
You know, I never do. I always Moog. I don't know. I'd have to ask him, and I don't have his number.
Singer. Like, what a great rock and roll singer. I like every song. It's just like, yeah. Anyway,
his lyrics are really coolly weird too. I remember I didn't really, I wasn't a huge lyric person back then. I just liked the hooks and the melodies.
Yeah.
But there's some footage of early UFO where he didn't quite have the lyrics down yet. It's just hilarious. It's just something that doesn't make much sense, but who cares?
Yeah.
It's rock. Oh, and you're right. I mean, he was a great singer, and he had good phrasing too. He had great rock and roll phrasing. So. Yeah, this is good. And having, being a good singer with a good phrasing, it never hurts to have the kind of band that both of these bands have behind them when you're delivering them. That just takes it to the next level.
Yeah. And I would even say he used great restraint as a singer, right? It wasn't like he was getting into his own voice and trying to do all this crazy shit. It's just, he served the songs really well with his voice. He had a unique, cool rock voice that just served the songs. Again, I think that it just appeals to everything that I like in some music and songs, melody, restraint, feel, all of that stuff. Both of these albums, I think, kind of fit or appeal to all of those things that I dig about music.
Yeah. Hey, did you ever see UFO live in the 70s?
No, it's one of the things I really kicked myself about too, because they were playing, I think they played the Paramount and all kinds of cool places, but I never saw them live.
I saw them once, but not with Michael Schenker. I saw them with Paul Chapman, and they were still great.
Yeah.
Paul Chapman was a good guitar player, but nobody can match Schenker. But what Paul Chapman did in that band was really good. I mean, the band didn't go completely downhill when Schenker left, but there's no matching Schenker. I mean,
yeah. I mean, the way he plays is just so unique, and the sound he gets is so cool. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, those are big shoes to fill in any band. So, but yeah, that's the one thing I wish I would have saw when I was young is that band live, because I'm sure it would have just been crazy cool,
Yeah. I saw him with Cheap Trick and UFO, probably in 82. Right. No, it was the Wild, the Willing, and the Innocent tour, whatever that was.
Oh, that's cool. Did you see the Replacements live?
I did. I saw them a couple times. It's weird because for a long time there was a semi-famous Ann Arbor show that a lot of people were at where like Bob Stinston didn't show up. It was like classic Replacements, and they had some waiter or something play guitar for them. I heard that story so many times from my sister who was there and some other friends that were there, that for a while I thought I was there. I was describing the show. I'm like, and then it dawned on me I was not there. So I did never get to see the Replacements with Bob Simpson. I saw him with Slim Dunlap in probably 87 or 88, maybe 89. And I saw their reunion show here at the Paramount a few years ago, which was great. But so I've only seen them twice. I thought I saw them third. I thought I saw one of the most infamous Replacement shows ever, but turns out I just absorbed somebody's memory. But that's what getting old will do.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, that's cool. I never saw them live either. I wish I had too, because they were on my radar for sure. But I don't know why I didn't go see them live. But well, cool. I really dig talking about these albums like this. We'll do more of this because I think it's really fun to just kind of get into not only the guitar stuff, but just the songs and the other instruments and the live versus the studio and all that stuff. So, all right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We dig it. as always, check us out on social media. Chris, you got any parting thoughts?
No, just thank you for listening to us talk about these two records.
Awesome. Until next time, bye.